Success stories and interviews with game changers and thought leaders who have overcome both in life and in business. Welcome to Vertical Momentum.
Hey guys, check out the new episode, the new podcast. Appreciate you guys. Just remember, if you guys want a podcast, there's no better way to do it than Anchor. Number one, it's free. Everybody loves free. Free. And then you can also record and edit your podcast right here and not have to go anywhere else. And Anchor will also distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. So guys, definitely, if you're looking to podcast, use Anchor. Love you guys.
You got
Has the eagle landed now?
There we go, brother. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vertical Momentum. This is going to be fun. But first, I want to thank our sponsors, and of course, our guest is going to know this gentleman and his company very well. Mark Laser and NutriBio. They give me all my supplements, and I love their company. I'm actually drinking a pre-workout right now. I love his company. So, guys, definitely check out NutriBio. Mark Laser is a great guy, great company. And also another gentleman, he has a company called Victory Warrior. He makes great workout clothes and T-shirts, and will actually customize them for your employees and for gifts for Christmas. And he is a veteran, so he also helps out with veteran charities. So victorywarrior.com. Guys, this is going to be a fun episode, especially for me. They say never meet your heroes, and this gentleman was one of my heroes. And I'm truly grateful that he decided to hang out with us. Rick, my brother, what's going on, brother?
Oh man, well, thank you for having me. Those are words to wisdom to my ears, brother. I appreciate the nice words. Mark Laser also is a great guy, so you're in good stead with NutriBio. But thank you very much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Well, we have a lot of friends in common. And one thing that I didn't realize that we do have in common is that we both love the movie The Last Dragon. And that's like one of my favorite movies of like all time.
Timac, right? Timac back in the day, right?
Anytime
Unbelievable.
I'm going to watch it. You know, I watch it every single time.
Yeah, it's one of those movies, if you're just sort of flipping through channels and you hit it, you're stuck with it. You're staying with it. And Vanity was amazing in it. It's just a great movie overall.
Yeah, I do love it. Now, like I said, you know, I've been following your career for years. And whenever I would get my Muscular Development magazine, the first article I would turn to would be Greg Valentino's because he was so crazy.
Yeah,
and then,
no doubt.
And then the next article I would go to your Legal Muscle.
Well,
and everything else in the magazine I would get to eventually.
Wow. Well, that's high praise. I thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, because I just never knew some of the crazy stuff. I mean, especially like with what went through with the Ryans and all that. I just never realized how crazy our system is.
You know, it's amazing. I've been writing now this is, I think, my 20th year writing, and the editor is great. And Steve Blechman, the publisher, has always really just let me write about whatever, just trusted me to write about what struck my fancy. So obviously I write a lot about performance enhancing drug issues, a lot about dietary supplement and sports nutrition issues. But I also have had the chance to write about issues of law and social commentary and policy and why things are the way they are. Sort of, I've taken a page out of one of my heroes, Malcolm Gladwell, who's just a great writer and looks at issues and dissects them in a fresh way. And my goal was always to take different issues, whether it's a medical or a scientific or a legal or public policy issue, and frame it in what should fitness people think about this? How should bodybuilders look at this issue? And I've written about everything from limiting the size of sugary soft drinks and whether freedom or health should prevail, to laws on limiting smoking in parks, all sorts of different, a very diverse kind of topic menu, and it's just been amazing. And Ron Harris, who's the editor now,
I love Ron.
Ron just lets me write what I want, and Alan Golnick does a great job of making me look good each month. So I love writing for Muscular Development, and Ron and I are now we just launched a little podcast, which we call Legal Muscle, and I'm doing it maybe once a month or once every other month, and it's recapping different issues that I think are important to people in the fitness community on issues of law and policy. So I'm blessed, man. I love what I do. You say you've been following me for a long time. I've been around. I've been around a long time. I've been in the fitness and bodybuilding realm for many years. Look, I competed as a bodybuilder in my late teens and early 20s. Had my NPC card and won some trophies and different bodybuilding shows. So I've walked the walk for many years, and for me to be able to help people as an attorney now in the bodybuilding and fitness world is just a dream come true.
I've been in the fitness. Well, I was in the fitness industry since '86, so it's kind of like I've seen a lot of stuff happen. It's so many different changes coming around. And I learned. I'm only got a ninth grade formal education, but I think I learned so much just by reading your articles.
Well, thank you.
Because it wasn't just about the fitness industry; it was about law. It was about you didn't take a lot of because I was in the military for over 23 years,
right?
And they frowned upon anabolics, but they didn't test for anabolics. So it was it was like a really weird. It's like those are the guys that you want to be jacked.
So is that like a don't ask, don't tell policy for performance enhancing drugs then?
Yeah, I mean, unless like I had one guy, he was in my tank. I mean, the guy was with King Kamali at one time. I mean, he was like 3% body fat or 7%, something stupid, and and by military standards, he was obese. And you're like, wait a minute, this guy's shredded, but because of the military standards of height and weight, he was obese. And you're like,
well, I think a lot of us might qualify under BMI charts. They're not made for people who are carrying any kind of muscle, and other than people who are bodybuilders or super fit, nobody's going to have the amount of muscle that would make them into a BMI category. Most of the people who would be obese by the BMI charts are people who would be more classically, overweight with a high body fat percentage.
Yeah. So now tell us a little bit about your past. Where were you born? What kind of little kid were you coming up?
So I've lived most of my life on Long Island in New York. I went to kindergarten in Rochester, New York, but other than that, it's been Long Island and Queens, so New York City and the island all of my life. Didn't have an enormous amount of resources, money when I was growing up. So my dad passed on when I was 16. And so I worked my way through college, had a number of different jobs. I was a bouncer in nightclubs on Long Island South Shore. I was a nursing home orderly, which is a sobering job to have at a young age, but also one that teaches you good life lessons and also teaches you how important it is to stay in shape as you age. And then I was also a personal trainer working in gyms and things like that. So I worked my way through.
What was your first, like, I know that like one of my mom used to be a nurse, and when I was 6 or 7 years old, like we'd be in a bathroom and she would just leave her anatomy and physiology books around. So I started getting into it and then I went to a garage sale and I seen this old VHS tape. It was the old Arnold tape.
Right.
So what was your first memories of the fitness and bodybuilding and superheroes and stuff like that?
So, I do believe that a lot of it may be a different time, but back when I was a kid growing up, comic books were a huge thing. And I remember like looking at the superhero physiques of, you know, the Batmans and all of the Marvel characters and some of the guys in the DC comics, and thinking, you know, that's the way somebody should look. That's the way I want to look. And I think that a lot of folks who became bodybuilders in my generation started because somehow, and who knows why it resonates with some and not others, but there's some of us for whom we look at those heroic physiques in the comic books even at a very, very young age, and it's like I see myself, that's how I want to look. And so I got into bodybuilding, I think originally inspired by the comic books, and then ultimately inspired by the real life bodybuilders who looked like the folks, you know, the heroes in the comic books. So, you know, back when I was in high school, Arnold was kind of in his heyday. It was Arnold and Frank Zane and Franco and Boyer Coe and Bill Grant and all of that generation. I remember reading what was then Muscle, Builder, and Power.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, back in the day, or Dan Lurie's magazines, or Bob Kennedy.
Oh, I love MuscleMag.
Yeah, MuscleMag. You know, it's funny. When I was probably in college, or just out of high school, I wrote Bob Kennedy used to have like a column that was reader tips. So if you were a reader of MuscleMag, you would be able to send a little note to Bob Kennedy about a recommendation for an exercise or a training technique. I remember writing just what my trap routine, just sort of a way of hitting traps in a unique way. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I offered 3 little tips on different types of exercise protocols, and he published it. And that was actually my first published writing, was bodybuilding tips to Bob Kennedy. And I met him years later at different conferences and trade shows, the Arnold or the Olympia. But that's how it started for me.
And Bob Kennedy, when he passed, man, that was a heartbreaker. When he, you know.
Yeah, he was a kind guy. He loved bodybuilding, and look, that those back then, those images, those stories, training regimens, routines, that was what really inspired me. Obviously now it's very different. You've got social media and, everything is digital now. But back then, I remember I was in high school and I bought Mike Mentzer's Little Heavy Duty. Remember that pamphlet that Mike Mentzer had?
Oh, I love him. He was amazing.
Did you have his Heavy Duty book?
I had everything. That's where Dorian got all his stuff too.
Oh, absolutely. And Arthur Jones and the whole Nautilus, training, philosophy was what inspired, I guess, Mike. But it was, supersetting and isolation exercise, followed by a compound movement, the whole pre-exhaust and doing very few sets, which, yes, ultimately Dorian adopted that training philosophy and, with great success, I might add. But
can you imagine stepping on stage, like Arnold would step on stage at 240, 241. Can you imagine somebody stepping on the Olympia stage now at 240?
Yeah, well, evolution, right? Things evolve, and lots of things have changed since those days. And there are those who look back and admire some of those physiques of either the late 70s or the 80s or even the early 90s, more from an aesthetic standpoint than some of the physiques that are out there today.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people, the most successful people that I've learned, that I've interviewed, they're very well read, and they believe that readers are leaders. Were you somebody that read a lot, even as a young kid and a teen?
I was, yeah. I was a big reader. I did well in school. I remember I had a buddy, a buddy of mine, and I would just read and then talk about what we read, and we would read things that we weren't being assigned at school, just to sort of expand our knowledge of the world. And I still read. I love books that kind of look into why things are the way they are. I mentioned Malcolm Gladwell earlier, something like Super Freakonomics, where it's looking at different phenomena, public policies, whatever, and figuring out why is it that way? Why have we done it that way? And I've tried to sort of, I think people who love to read sometimes also love to write. And I think a lot of my writing was inspired by my love of reading.
Well, like a friend of ours, Matt Weik. I mean, I don't know how you guys just keep pumping out stuff. I don't have the mind for it, but you guys keep on pushing out great
Matt is prolific. Matt really pumps out the content. He's a great writer, a great guy. He and I actually would hand out trophies at the Arnold Classic amateur competitions a few years. It's got to be probably 5 to 10 years ago that we were doing it. So we get the chance to spend a good part of the day together, and always fun. Whenever I can give back to bodybuilding by sponsoring contests. And I train at Bev's here on Long Island, which
that's a great best gym.
Have you trained at Bev's?
Yep, I've been trained there when they first opened. That is the Mecca. That is the Mecca, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's certainly the East Coast Mecca, and maybe the Mecca everywhere. But the equipment is phenomenal. The atmosphere is great. We've got pros who train there now. I just saw Max Charles last night, and Juan Morel I've seen on a regular basis, and
well, that's why you have the
it's great.
Pro. Everybody goes trains at Bev's.
No question. So I see Steve Weinberger all the time, and he's a great guy, and so I sponsor his shows, and it gives me an opportunity to give back to the community, because bodybuilding has been very, very good to me, without question.
So let me know, being from Jersey, you're either on two sides of the fence. Either, a lot of people want to be a cop or a firefighter or a lawyer, and the other side wants to stay away from the cops. So what made you decide, all right, I want to go to school to be a lawyer?
So I don't think I had any real interest in being a lawyer when I was in high school, and even in college. My major was psychology. I had a minor in drama, theater. I love acting, and a lot of courtroom lawyers are frustrated actors, and a lot of actors may be frustrated lawyers. But so I was actually on a track to be a psychologist, and at some point I kind of changed tracks. I got a full academic scholarship to law school, and so that was something I really couldn't turn down. And maybe in keeping with the superhero, it's funny. One of the superheroes that I used to love when I was a kid was Daredevil. Remember Daredevil?
A lot of people hated that movie. I thought it was one of the greatest movies ever written.
Well, the comic books were terrific. And if you remember, Daredevil was an assistant district attorney. So that's what he did. And so maybe somehow in my mind, I connected that maybe what I would do if I couldn't be an actual superhero, maybe I'd be an assistant district attorney like Daredevil was, and I'd be able to prosecute the folks who make life miserable for people, either by taking their money or hurting them physically, or any of the other things that occur in the criminal justice system that are particularly bad. And so that's what I did when I finished. As I was finishing law school, I was applying for DA's offices to be a prosecutor, and that's not the most lucrative thing. You're a government worker, so it's not a way to get rich by any stretch of the imagination. But it was interesting to me, and it also, I liked the idea of being in a courtroom. They say that one of the greatest fears that people have is of public speaking, right? Even death, I think, when they poll people. But there are some people who like public speaking, and
Yep.
and I'm the kind of person who, maybe because it was the actor in me, I liked the idea of getting up in front of a courtroom, standing in front of a jury, persuading the jury that my side should win and why, and there's some theatrical component to it, which attracted me. So that idea of lawyering, I liked always. Like everybody, who's a competitive bodybuilder in their late teens, early 20s. Of course, my other track goal for life was to become Mr. Olympia, of course, and so. But ultimately, I decided that I'd follow the law track, and I stopped competing in bodybuilding. I remembered you may remember years ago, there was a bodybuilder by the name of Steve Mahalik. You remember Steve?
Oh yeah, one of the nicest physiques at that time.
Yeah, wide, tiny waist, wide shoulders, flaring lats. He owned a gym here on Long Island called Mr. America's, and I remember I competed in a show, and I took second, and one of his day managers came up to me after the show and said, you have this incredible potential. If you come and train at Steve's gym, follow all of our protocols, you'll really be able to make a dent into the bodybuilding world. And it was flattering, it was tempting, but I had already started the track. I had applied and been accepted to law school, and I was like, okay, this is a crossroads in life, and what am I going to do? Am I gonna go the bodybuilding route, or am I going to go the lawyering route? So ultimately, I decided, what, I'm going to hang up the posing trunks and pick up a different set of briefs, and
Yeah.
into the legal world. But the great irony, as I look back now on all these years later, is that I'm probably more involved in the bodybuilding world now than I ever would have been if I had taken that other course. If I had, competed and decided I was going to, try for a pro card and all of that stuff, probably I don't know how far I would have gotten, but I probably, like a lot of, high-ranking NPC or IFBB pros, I probably would have ultimately, gone on to do something else and moved on to some other course of life and been less involved directly in the bodybuilding community. But because I chose the course that I did, my vocation ultimately melded with my avocation, my skills and training as a lawyer, blended with my experiences and connections in the bodybuilding world, so that now I'm very involved. I don't know if there's a few other lawyers who are as involved in the bodybuilding world as I am. I've had, my firm has represented, back in the day, Sylvester Stallone's nutrition company. I've represented many IFBB pros on different legal matters of different kinds, high-ranking NPC bodybuilders, people in the sports nutrition industry. I used to work with Ben Weider on a number of legal issues as counsel for the IFBB Pro League. Once got the opportunity to spend a whole afternoon with Governor Schwarzenegger in his office, which was in California, which for me, as the kid who was reading Muscle Builder and Power with Arnold on the cover when I was 17 years old, this was like a dream come true.
So, of course, you're still working out while you're going to college, so you're still pretty jacked. And a lot of people, look at bodybuilders and think, at first glance, they're like, okay, they're dumb. They're just a muscle head. They pick things up and put things down. And then, because like the way I experience it, because, I've met a lot of the pros, and I've also, now I'm talking to a lot of Navy SEALs and operators like Delta Force. But the guys that you think are going to be muscle heads are like the most studious people that you'll ever meet. So how was it, when people first met you, they're like, holy shit, this dude's big, but I bet he doesn't have a brain. And all of a sudden you start talking to him, What's that, that first
Well,
conversation like?
well, it's funny you say that because now because a lot of young law students and young lawyers will read my columns or find me online or through social media. Um, it seems like there are a lot of male and female fitness and bodybuilding folks who are in law school, and I think fitness is just very much more accepted and more mainstream now than it ever was back when I was starting law school. When I started law school, there was really virtually nobody else, a handful of folks who were into fitness. Nobody was my size. Nobody was really a hardcore bodybuilder. Nobody was coming out of bodybuilding competitions. And back then, it was more unusual, and because of that, the stigma that would attach to that kind of a physique was much, much stronger. And I remember starting law school and, showing up and, people would look at me and I could see that there were assumptions being made based on how I looked physically, that I didn't have a brain, that I wasn't going to make it through the first year of law school. I was gonna be just crushed and fallen by the wayside. And the reality is, what they didn't know, of course, was that I was one of the few who was there on a full academic scholarship. So I kind of had to make a decision either to try to convince people that, notwithstanding the fact that I looked different than anybody else, that I still was smart, and that wasn't for me. So I actually just doubled down. So I would come to law school wearing a, boat neck, ripped up sweatshirt, sweatpants, which back then were like almost like the Mike Christian platinum everywhere,
The Zubaz,
uh,
the Zubaz,
yeah, zebra patterns, crazy stuff,
like Rick
and
Valente back in the day.
Exactly, just like that. And so my hat on backwards. So I basically doubled down on meathead when I was in law school, because part of it was I thought it was funny to just sort of rag on it and to just defy the expectations. And then of course I made it to law review in my first year. And so the academics followed, and I did very well in law school, but I certainly didn't try to blend in.
So now to flip the script. So now, if you're the prosecutor, and I don't know who you are, and I look at you, because like I said, I've met you a few times, but if I was a criminal and I just looked over at the prosecutor's table and I see you, I'd be like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. So what was that like? Now people are looking at you, and you are the prosecutor, but you're also jacked. So that must have been a little bit intimidating on their part.
Yeah, I think, like all of us, if you have physicality, you can wield it wisely, right? You know when to use it and how to use it. And so, whether I'm on the prosecutor's side or the defense side, I really go out of my way to be benign and to be respectful and to be collegial with my adversary. Look, we're all doing a job. Each side has its own respective jobs. I never try to come out. If anything, I try not to be intimidating. I try to be disarming, and to what extent I can, charming in dealing with my adversaries and with everybody. Life is too short to be unpleasant ever. But I do think that probably on some subconscious level, there is a value to the physicality. I think there is a subtext, no matter what you do, of at least physical presence that you're going to have if you're in a size 54 suit jacket and a 34-inch waist. People are going to see that. They're going to know it. No matter how kindly you are, I do think that there's some subconscious value to the to the physical presence that comes from a bodybuilding physique.
Because back in the day, if I was a criminal in Texas and Ronnie poured himself out of that car and came up to the car weighing 260 pounds, that would be pretty damn intimidating to me,
Right. There's no question. It's funny, when I left the DA's office after 5 years of prosecuting, I went into the opposite arena. So now I was going to represent people accused of crimes, and so I switched hats, and like many prosecutors, I went to the criminal defense side. And when you first start out as a criminal defense lawyer and you're building your practice and your reputation and your networking so that more people will hire you, during that time, you typically accept assigned cases. And what that means is people who can't afford their own attorney and who need counsel because they're charged with a crime, the court will appoint lawyers, including private lawyers, to represent people on a individual basis. And so, like many lawyers, I did that kind of appointed work, assigned counsel work. And because of the physicality that I had at that time, the judges would often assign me defendants, people accused of crimes, who had not gotten along with their previous counsel. So if a defendant was angry with a past lawyer, threatened the lawyer, physically attacked the lawyer, the judge would see me walk into a courtroom and would say, I see Mr. Collins has walked into the courtroom. Mr. Collins, step up to the bench. Step up. Yo, I'm so excited. We have a gentleman who's waiting in the back. He's in the pens. He attacked his last 3 lawyers. He's very, very angry. But go back there. You're going to be his new lawyer. His case is on for trial next week. You can start preparing with him, and we'll see you on Tuesday to pick a jury. And I would need to then go into the little holding pens, little basically cells, little jail cells, cages behind the courtroom, and meet with somebody who had bad experiences with the last few lawyers, sometimes had some level of mental illness or oppositional defiance disorder or some level of antisocial behavior. And I would then need to get that person to sort of win that person over, because you can't really try a case and represent somebody that you're not talking to and getting along with. And I do think that the physicality, the potential intimidation factor, helped get through that initial sort of situation, because I wasn't afraid of them, as I would be assigned to those clients, and they kind of knew that. And so there was a higher level of mutual respect to start with. And I remember being assigned to one guy, and I've told this story in other podcasts, that basically we had a staring standoff on either side of the bars. And I was close enough that I knew that he could reach through the bars and grab me. He was a former middleweight boxer. He was one of Mike Tyson's undercards in some of his fights. And, we were close enough that almost nose to nose, and he stopped talking and I stopped talking, and he started moving back and forth and biting his lip. And ultimately, when I realized I couldn't get anywhere with reason or logic or being nice in my words to him, I just started doing the same thing back to him. And that went on for maybe 90 seconds of just the two of us kind of standing off to see who would punch who first. And ultimately, I stopped and said, well, now do you want to talk about this case? And he looked at me and he said, yeah, let's do that. And we got along fine from that moment on. I tried his case. I got him acquitted of all the higher charges. He was convicted of a lesser included offense. He was happy as a clam by the end of the case, and he tried to hug me when the case was finished. So, yes, physicality as a lawyer is an asset.
So now, okay, because I want to talk, we're going to talk business a little bit. A lot of people, like when I first started my podcast years ago, I tried to be something to everybody and nobody listened. Um, but now if I hear the word steroid and if I hear the word lawyer, your face just pops up in my mind. So it's kind of like unwittingly that became, in one way, a niche, to where
Right.
you're the go-to guy. You're the
Right.
goat as far as that. But of course, you've done some amazing other things. So
Yes.
talk to us about a little bit about niching down a little bit, and sometimes you have to specialize in something, because if you're just general counsel, you're not gonna you're not gonna be known for one certain thing, and like you are right now. So can you talk a
So,
little bit about niching down?
sure. So I think the world has become more complicated, and success has been more and more based on specialization. So you're right. The days of the general practitioner in law or medicine or many other areas is really over, because there's everything is so complicated that you really couldn't. I don't know how a lawyer could be just a general practitioner and be able to do a good job on a real estate closing on Monday and a matrimonial case on a Tuesday and go into criminal court on a Wednesday. To me, that's not a recipe for great results. So I think the more we specialize and concentrate in particular areas as professionals, the better the results will be. My goal was really ultimately to help folks in the fitness and bodybuilding world, and because a lot of the problems for bodybuilders in a criminal context were involving performance drugs like anabolic steroids or growth hormone or other things, that became sort of where my criminal defense practice started to orient. I didn't go into the business of law thinking, wow, I'm going to be the steroid lawyer or I'm going to be the dietary supplement sports nutrition lawyer. That just sort of happened organically because I had a background in those areas. I was interested in those areas. I knew a lot about those areas. And so people started to come to me with problems in that regard. And so ultimately, most of my practice now is, I'd say half of my practice is getting people out of trouble and the other is keeping them out of trouble. So the getting them out of trouble is typically dealing with bodybuilders or others, physicians sometimes, or police officers, or many others who wind up in some sort of criminal or administrative issue or trouble. Maybe they test positive in a doping screen, or maybe they're accused of using steroids or selling steroids or importing steroids or growth hormone or SARMs or uh, fraudulent research chemicals or dietary supplements that are spiked with something that shouldn't be in there. And I probably do more of that work than anybody else. And the more you know the way it is, the more you do of something, the better you get at it, because you've now seen every possible permutation, every wrinkle, so that when you come up to an adversary on the other side of a legal matter, you have seen 1,000 times more of this sort of, you've thought about it more, you've been involved with it more. So you should be 10, 15, 20, 30 steps ahead of your adversary who maybe has never dealt with this kind of matter before. So that's why I think, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And if it's something that you love doing, which for me now, I do a lot of criminal defense work, but I don't need to represent people who steal money from others or who hold people at gunpoint or who, kidnap people or who sexually assault people. I don't have to do those. I have a law firm and I have partners, and some of them do bread and butter criminal defense. And so they represent people, but I can kind of pick and choose cases. And most of the cases I choose are representing people in the bodybuilding community, and they're people who are not dissimilar from people who I've spotted and had gotten spots from in gyms across the country for many years. So getting those people out of trouble, particularly for performance-related drug issues that, there's some debate about whether the law really should treat those people who use those products in the same way as people who use addictive narcotic drugs. But I feel good about what I do there. And the other half of what I do is keeping people out of trouble. And so I work a lot with sports nutrition brands and other dietary supplement companies to make sure that they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's and making sure that the claims that they make are within the boundaries of what's allowed, and that the ingredients that they're selling are ingredients that should be on the market. So again, it's sort of where my whole practice is where health and fitness, particularly bodybuilding, meets the law. And I couldn't be happier with what I do.
And one thing, like I said, I've been in the industry now since '86, and it seems like for a while they were prosecuting, bodybuilders and fitness people for steroids, and then it's kind of like, all right, let's start looking at some of these companies. And I'm not going to mention any names because I'm not about to get sued. But we all know one company that, they're taking pictures on Instagram in their mansions and all their Lambos, and all of a sudden the feds are all over them. And now they're looking at indictments for a couple of years. So what made the switch from them saying, hey, you know what, we're going to start going after people personally, so now we're going to start going after companies? That was a major switch, and that actually turned the whole supplement industry on its ears.
Yeah, there's been fits and starts. There was another time many years ago when they went after companies, and you'll probably remember the bodybuilding.com search warrant that was in, we're talking now almost 20 years ago, 18 or something years ago.
That's crazy.
And yeah, isn't that crazy? And there were a whole bunch of sports nutrition companies back then that were making pro-hormone products. The pro-hormone market had started in the very late 90s and had continued to sort of grow, and what started as andro alone had become, a whole lot of different precursors to andro.
That stuff actually worked.
Eventually, they got, it got bolder and bolder, and so people were just looking for steroid molecules that were not identified in the then existing law with respect to steroids, and were just marketing them. And so the bodybuilding.com search warrant was to go after a whole bunch of companies that had pro-hormone products on the market then. I wound up representing a bunch of those companies in Boise, Idaho, which is where it was most of those cases were brought, although there were a few cases brought in other districts as well. And so, it's interesting. My practice in defending companies and individuals involved in performance drugs or steroids and other stuff has taken me all across the country. I've had cases in courthouses from the West Coast straight all through the East Coast, Florida, Texas. I've had a lot of cases in Texas, in a number of jurisdictions: New York, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, DC, Texas, federal courts all over the country. So, it's interesting. I used to travel a lot in defending folks. Now, since the pandemic hit, a lot of the cases are being handled by Zoom. And so doing court appearances, I can do a court appearance in California in the morning and a court appearance in Florida in the afternoon without ever leaving my laptop.
Yeah, it's funny because I went to dinner the other night with a judge, and we were talking about the same thing. He's like, yeah, sometimes I have my my coat and my shirt on, and underneath I'm wearing shorts. I could just hang out, do it all through Zoom. Now, back in the day, even Muscle Tech had a product out there called acetabolin. They were actually just sometimes using steroids names just to try to get customers before everything shut down. So now, what do you
Yeah.
think is the state of the health and fitness industry as we speak? Because one thing I love about Mark, Glazier from NutriBio, whatever it says in the bottle whatever's on the label, it's in the bottle. He doesn't bullshit. He doesn't, do all that other stuff. So that's why I love his products. But what do you think?
He's actually, Mark is actually working on a new brand as a contract manufacturer for a friend of mine. I don't know if you know Will
Great
Brink,
person. Another
but
prolific person.
another prolific
Yes,
writer.
yes.
And Will finally came out with something he's believed in for a long time, which is a healthy coffee product called Alpha Joe. And Mark Glazer is actually producing the product for him. So I can't wait to get a bottle and try it. Are you a coffee drinker?
What it is, because like I said, I was with GNC for like 30 years, and I would always be having like sucking down energy drinks. But as I get older, it's like, okay, I could have one or two a day, but that's about it. So when it comes out, I definitely check it out. By the way, because like once I lost my vision, 'cause I'm 80% blind, my hearing got very in tune. And when
We adapt, right? We compensate.
And when I'm listening to you, it sounds like I'm talking to Paul Stanley from Kiss. You have the same voice,
really?
because he's from the same area. So you guys have this. It sounds exactly.
I wish I had his singing.
Or his money, voice. Right?
Yeah, or his
so
money.
So what do you think the state of the health and fitness industry is right now?
It's interesting. I think more people are into fitness and health now than ever before. Putting this pandemic issue aside, I think health and fitness are more mainstream. But we really, if you look at statistics on American health, particularly overweight and obesity, I think we've hit our peak in terms of percentages of obesity and folks who are overweight. We talked a little bit before about BMI, but most of the people who are obese and overweight are not bodybuilders. Most of the folks are jeopardizing their health in that. It's funny. I did a column not long ago on the issue of fat shaming versus fat acceptance.
That was a great, very good article. That was a great article.
Thanks. And just sort of the idea that you can choose to say that neither are a good thing. Obviously, I would hope that we're now at a place where we know that making fun of people for any reason, particularly for obesity or a weight issue, it's not going to help them. If anything, it's going to make them more depressed and be counterproductive to them. So fat shaming is obviously a big no-no and not something we should be doing. But there is also a counter movement of fat acceptance and a fat pride movement. And I think that we have to be careful about being so worried about hurting people's feelings these days that we deny science and deny medicine and deny real health issues. So I covered that, and I think in a very sensitive way that was kind and and intended to be, and hopefully was helpful to folks. But yeah, with the issues that we have now with health and the ties that obesity has to a whole host of medical issues, I think we have to pay more attention as a country to our health. I do hear that now the big supplement industry, has exploded in terms of immunity products. Every company now, the big hot thing is immunity, right? Because everybody wants to try to make themselves as healthy as possible during the pandemic. And as you know, just from your days at GNC, the difference between a drug and a supplement in terms of claims is that a drug can make claims, a prescription drug can say this will reduce your blood pressure or this will help fight COVID. A supplement, if it says that, is going to get at a minimum a warning letter from FDA saying you can't make disease claims. You can't say that a dietary supplement product will cure or treat or mitigate or diagnose a disease. You can't make those claims. So, but I do see that that's a huge, hot thing. I don't know about the sports nutrition industry. I have friends in it, obviously, and some are doing well, but some companies I think have struggled because there was a period of time when gyms were closed, and when even Bev's was closed for a period of time. I think it was about 5 months. And if you follow me on Instagram, I posted some pictures of where I was training for those 5 months while the gym was closed, and it was my basement. I had gotten a pair of adjustable dumbbells and a couple of benches, and was doing what I could in the basement. So I can.
That's why I love my friend Jimmy Mentis. He's got his own pit. He started his own pit, so now he'll be able to work out whenever he wants to work out. And that's one thing I loved about Bob Bonham. I always loved going to Strong and Shapely. I thought that was a hell of a gym also.
It's funny you say that. For some reason on my Facebook or Instagram feeds today, a picture of me with about 10, 12 years ago, I wrote a book called Alpha Male Challenge.
I have it.
With a co-author. And my co-author was James Villapeg, who had written a number of fitness books, and he and I co-wrote this book, and it's sort of a nutrition and exercise regimen for guys looking to reclaim their health. It wasn't a hardcore bodybuilding book. It was more of a fitness get healthy book, and a lot of good common sense diet stuff and nutrition stuff in it. And I just, on my feed this morning, was a picture of James and me and Bob Bonham at Strong and Shapely Gym, which was taken probably about 10 years ago.
And I love that place. There's something walking in there and you're like, wow, okay, I'm home, So now, we're both in our 50s. I mean, so talk to us, for a lot of people that are on here, maybe they might have fallen out of shape. What are some of the common sense ways they can do to start getting back into shape slowly, but can be able to stay on the right track?
Right. I think even if it's just 3 days a week, weight training is so important. Weight training is of great value both to men and to women. Back years ago, you and I, I'm sure, heard women say, I don't want to get too muscular, as if you're going to, do 3 curls and you're going to look like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I think women, particularly for staving off osteoporosis and retaining bone mass, super important. So it could be 3 days a week of weight training and some cardio as well, because you got to spend some time, trying to make sure that the old ticker is going to be working properly as you get older. So I'm not a huge indoor gym cardio guy. I do it, reluctantly and holding my nose for it, but I like outdoor cardio. So a couple years ago, I bought a weighted vest. You can get them online, and they're adjustable. You just slip these weights into the vest, which has little slits and compartments to hold these bricks of weight. And I'll do either a very rugged trail, which is up on the North Shore of Long Island, and it's like a 2-mile trail, and do it with the weighted vest on, or I'll do bleachers. I've got a high school and a stadium not far from me, and I'll just start at the bottom of the bleachers and work my way up and work my way down with the weighted vest. And I'll tell you, my quads and calves are screaming the next day. But it's also, it's intense. You try throwing, 25 pounds of extra weight on, and you feel lighter all day. So, doing cardio, doing, some amount of weight training, I think you've got to just prioritize it. People will sometimes, let it go, and then it's harder to start up again. You've got to adapt. I remember when I had little kids at home, when my kids were very, very young, I wanted to put them to bed. So I would come home from work, and instead of going right to the gym, I'd spend a little time, eat dinner with the family, put the kids to bed, and then go to the gym. So I was training at like 9:30 at night. Why? Because I had to adapt my training schedule. Luckily, I had training partners who were willing to, humor me and adapt their schedules to mine. So we would train from like 9:30 till 11 at night. And I did that when my kids were little. I train a little earlier now, but finding a way to adapt is, to keep your fitness, if you're willing to prioritize it, is super important. One of the things you may have read, I've written a few columns about what bodybuilding teaches us. And I've written these columns both in terms of the big picture, but also as a business person, as a person looking to be successful in a walk of life or an occupation or a profession outside of bodybuilding, and the lessons that we learn from bodybuilding, which make us better at those other things that we do. And one of those things certainly is, learning to adapt. So if you can't train at a particular time, you circle around and you do something different. All of us have had injuries, at some point in bodybuilding. Years ago, I tore my tricep in kind of a freak accident, and then I, instead of taking the time off and saying, I'm just going to wait until I'm well again, within 2 weeks, I was back in the gym, arm in a sling. I was training legs. I was training, there's enough equipment now, hammer strength and other equipment that enables you to train one side of the body without using the other. And my training partners would throw the plates on, and I would do one arm lat pull downs and one arm seated chest presses and one arm side laterals, working the other. And I remember reading a number of studies that suggested, and I recommend this to anybody who ever injures a body part, whether it's a arm problem or a leg problem, train the other limb as aggressively as possible. Don't lay off, train it hard. There is a contralateral effect to unilateral training. By training that left arm, you will get benefits and reduce the atrophy in the injured right arm. And there's, that sort of neurological effect is documented in the science. Don't be afraid. If I train my left arm and not train my right arm, I'm going to be, somehow lose symmetry. Nonsense. Train it as hard as you can, and you will see when that cast came off my injured arm, I had very, very little atrophy. It was amazing. And I was able to come fully back with the injured arm, I think, in half the time of what it would have taken me if I had just sat on the couch for those months, feeling sorry for myself that I couldn't, train completely.
I love that, brother. So now, how can we get in touch with you if we need a good lawyer? How do we get in touch with you if we just have some questions to ask? And where can we find some of your books? Because I'm going to put that in some of the liner notes, so where they can pick up that book. Because I have the book,
sure,
and it's on my shelf,
well,
and I still love that book.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So I'm active on social media. So the first place to find me might be my Instagram at Rick Collins ESQ, and I try to mix some law, bodybuilding, a little bit of social commentary, and some humor. So Rick Collins ESQ. You can also go to my website, rickcollins.com. My contact information is there. If you're interested in sort of the more hardcore aspects of bodybuilding, you can go to steroidlaw.com, and some information there. My address, my phone numbers are on all of those sites, so it's easy for people to reach me. You can email me through those sites or message me on social media. I try to help everybody I can. I've written 2 books. One is Alpha Male Challenge. You can get it on Amazon, and it's a 10-week plan in diet and exercise plan. And there's a lot of, don't forget, I was a psychology major, so there's also a lot of sort of attitude component to it, and sort of kind of what the alpha concept is, not to be a jerk about things, but to really bring out the best in yourself. And that sort of alpha attitude is a lot of what the book is comprised of. And my original book years ago was Legal Muscle. And Legal Muscle was really about anabolic steroids in American law, culture, politics, sports, and that book it's out of print. You know, if I were to try to, at this point, it's out of date because the laws have changed, the federal sentencing guidelines have changed. So I would have a huge project in updating that, but it's available, I guess, as a souvenir book on eBay and some other sites like that. And look, you know, I'm here for the bodybuilding community. I love what I do. I love helping bodybuilders. I have like Liam Neeson in Taken says, I have a very particular set of skills, and I like to put them to use for people in the fitness community. I work with some lawyers in my office who do a number of different things. It's not just a steroid kind of thing, and it's not just a dietary supplement or sports nutrition thing. I work with a lawyer who does trademark and intellectual property. So if you wanted to trademark a product or a name, you can reach out to me. I have a law partner. My firm is diverse. I'm specialized, but different players within my firm do different things. And one of the partners does exclusively personal injury cases. So it's car accidents, slip and falls, and things like that. So that's what he does. I have two partners that do bread and butter criminal defense. So we're a diverse law firm. You can certainly reach out to me. And if you have any kind of legal problem, if I don't do it, I know who does. And I do get a lot of calls. Somebody from Muscular Development just reached out to me yesterday on the staff there, and it was something in California involving matrimonial, and not at all something that I would do, but I was able to give the connections and the advice for that person to get the help. And I'm happy to do that in any given case. If somebody has a legal problem, just reach out to me. I probably know somebody where you are who would be able to help.
Yep, I'm right across the bridge. So now, last question I have for everybody,
Yes.
because I ask 100 people and I get 100 different answers. You know, we live in a very crazy world now. We have grandparents teaching kids homeschooling, and parents trying to just put food on the table. So if I ask the average person to do something in 7 days, they're probably never going to get to it. But if I ask somebody to take an actionable step, they're more likely. So if you know somebody that's struggling with their health and their fitness, what is something they can do in the next 24 hours to start to right the ship?
Well, you know, they always say that the abs are made in the kitchen, right? And so I think one thing is you can just right now, everybody's going to eat. You know, you're going to have breakfast, you're going to have lunch, or you're going to have dinner. Make a smart choice. Make your next meal a smart choice. Make the meal something other than a fast food meal. Make it something other than, you know, useless sugar or massive amounts of salt, or, you know, other types of carbs that have no nutrient value to them. Make some smart choices. Eat some veggies. Eat some lean meat. Eat some fish. Eat something healthy. And then once you do that, now you got one meal under your belt, right? I mean, it's a matter of, you know, that first step. You just have to now take the next step, and the next step would be the next meal. And if you make smart choices in that next meal, then you'll be able to not be one of the statistics that we talked about, and you'll be able to, you know, accomplish just day by day getting where you want to be.
You know, Rick, thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you got so much going on, but it was truly an honor to be able to be.
No, the honor is mine, my friend. I truly appreciate the opportunity to chat with you today. You know, we've known each other a long time, and it took us a while to get us together here, but I'm very grateful that you reached out to me and that we were able to make
And
this happen.
so much. Thanks to the guys at NutriBio for everything that you guys do. And if you guys love to wear great workout gear that helps support veteran causes, check out victorywarrior.com, and definitely check out the Legal Muscle book if you can get it, because that's where I learned a lot from your book. That first book was amazing.
Thank
All
you
right,
so
my
much.
brother. Well, have a blessed day and have an amazing week.
Thank you. You too, my brother. Be well.
Thank you for joining us today. Please hit subscribe and share. Please feel free to leave us a comment.